ma'am. Hello. So, Saloua Benkhouya, thank you very much for joining us. She's our next speaker. And bear with me, she is a proud mother of two young boys, Adam and Elias, and has accumulated 18 years of international experience as an executive in financial service. Saloua had the privilege of living and working in several countries, which shaped her global perspective and awareness. She is known for her inclusive, authentic, and highly energetic leadership style. She worked for leading global organizations including HSBC Bank, SNC Lavalin, excuse my French, and RBC Bank, covering different sectors spanning healthcare, real estate, infrastructure, media, and entertainment. Until recently, Saloua was VP Business Financial Service at RBC Bank in Montreal, leading two of the most successful teams in the country and 1.5 billion diversified portfolio. Sheesh! She advised hundreds of companies on financing and capital structure decisions following a record year in 2021. Saloua left her job and a 10-year career to focus on personal projects and pursue her impact investing mission. She's a long-term investor and in recent years has taken an interest in backing female and underrepresented founders. So please join me in welcoming Saloua Benkhouya on stage. Thank you for joining us today, and the stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. And what a tough act. Samira, Ramonda, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to believe that I can. Abir, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this fantastic event. And, it's just the beginning and so much energy. I love the messages in the chat. And Ramonda and Samira, you both set the stage so beautifully, inspired us. So now that we're all inspired and ready to kick ass and to take our life in charge, and to do all these new things, exciting things, let me tell you how you can use the power of your story to get yourself some money, investors, loans, whatever it is that you need to be able to fund your venture. Because let's face it, we all need money to be able to take our business to the next level, right? And so the former banker in me, or the recovering banker in me, has the urge to share a presentation. So I'm going to share a presentation, but please, by all means, don't allow this to stop you from interacting. So I'm going to share the presentation. I will be going through my slides, but please feel free to interrupt, ask me questions. We don't have to wait until the end to ask me questions. This is meant to be a conversation, and I want you to take the most of this conversation. So I'm going to share my screen, if you allow me.
Yeah, go ahead. You are able to share.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Can you see my screen? Okay, fantastic. So today we'll be talking about the power of storytelling and getting funded. And so why should you be listening to me? And I think Abir introduced me and introduced my background. Thank you so much for that introduction, Abir. But essentially, for many, many years, I have invested in companies myself directly. So I put in my money. I've listened to pitches, to hundreds of pitches of people. And I've also invested money of other people, billions of dollars from banks into projects. So I can tell you from my experience, what is it that you can do and how can you use your voice, your power, the way, that we heard earlier to get yourself those dollars. Okay. And so without further ado, when we're talking about storytelling, okay, first things first, and I think that's so important and most entrepreneurs forget this, don't forget or try to keep true, authentic to who you are. So show your personality, tell your story, not some other story, not someone else's story, tell your own story. And some people forget, they get on stage, they get nervous, they start talking about their product, but they never tell their story. Why are you here in the first place? What inspired you to start this business? Why you're doing this? It's so important to get investors to believe in you, to build that emotional connection. So share your story first. When I talk also about show your personality, it doesn't just only mean talk about who you are and how you are. It's also how you dress. How do you show up to that meeting? And so for the longest time, I'll share my personal experience. I would show up to all these meetings as a banker in a black suit or a gray suit, pantsuit, and that wasn't really who I was. I loved wearing dresses. And so it wasn't until later in my career I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop wearing these black suits. I'm going to wear a dress that makes me feel good, still look professional, but makes me feel good, makes me feel confident. So wherever you are, show up in your true personality. And that's my number one advice for telling your story. Number 2 is have passion and have purpose. So you heard it. I'm not going to repeat it more. You heard it from Samira. You heard it so well, beautifully said. It's so important to have that passion for what you do and for what you're doing. If you are not convinced yourself, how can you be convincing for other people to back you? So have that passion before you show up on that stage. Number 3, write down, and listen to me carefully, write down with a pen and paper your most memorable stories and choose the ones that support your message. And why I say write down your stories, and this is something that is actually used a lot in the TED Talks. If you know TED Talks, they use that quite a bit, this technique. Because when you're on stage, you get nervous, and sometimes you want to make a message and you forget you were trying to say how you're going to connect the stories. When you write down those stories and you match your stories to your key messages, you have higher chance of owning it. And when you're up there and you're nervous, you might not remember the message, but you will remember your story. Okay. Number 4, engage with your audience to create an emotional connection. And so the 2 ladies that we just had, amazing connection. So great example of how you engage with your audience to create an emotional connection. They were vulnerable. They shared their stories. They shared their highs, but they also shared their lows. And that's how you create that emotional connection. Don't be afraid to show vulnerability. It is not about convincing them that you're invincible. It is convincing them that you're human and that you are someone who's going to make mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and you're going to pick up and go. And this is, you've heard it many, many times. Practice your pitch while smiling in front of a mirror or a camera. So I'm going to tell you personally, I thought this was something when my coach told me, Saloua, you're too serious. You need to start practicing in front of a mirror with a smile. I looked at her and I said, I work in a bank. I can't be smiling at clients. I was also fairly young when I was promoted a VP the first time, so that people have to take me seriously. So I can't be smiling all the time. She said, look, you need to smile when you talk to people because otherwise people can perceive you as intimidating. Smiling doesn't make you less professional. It makes you just pleasant and friendly and less intimidating. So just practice with a smile. And so when you're pitching to investors, you want to have that smile on, you want to be engaging. You don't want to be like a clown, but you just want to be engaging and you want to be inviting for people to ask questions, for people to challenge you, to have a conversation. So practice with that smile. If you don't want to do it in front of a camera, do it in front of a mirror. If you don't want to do it in front of a mirror, do it in front of your friend, in front of your spouse, in front of your sister, whoever. An audience who's going to give you genuine, honest feedback. And my last recommendation here when practicing storytelling is don't worry so much about giving this perfect pitch, right? You're up there to tell your story. We as women have so much the strong desire to always show up perfectly. Do I look perfect? Do I sound perfect? Don't worry about it. Just show up, and practice will make you perfect in time. So again, sharing a personal example, when I resigned, I took the decision to resign in December after months of tormenting myself, literally. Should I be doing this? This is the right thing. I was growing within the organization and I was having conversations with the board about continuing to grow my leadership within the organization, but I was not happy. I knew something was missing. Anyway, I worried so much about how am I going to break the news? How am I going to share this with my network? How am I going to share this on social media? I just worried so much about not having this perfect pitch or perfect story to tell. The day I gave my resignation and I went to pack up my stuff, I decided that I was going to do an Insta story on Instagram and share it. I was terrified. It was by no means perfect, but I did it anyway. And you know what? I got great feedback. Yes, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't meant to be perfect, but it's okay because practicing makes you perfect in time. So now that we've talked about storytelling, I'm going to take you through the landscape of funding. So when you have a business venture, you want to be funding it. First, most entrepreneurs or most founders will start by bootstrapping. And to the extent that you can, if you have the means, highly, highly recommend to bootstrap. What does bootstrap mean? Use your own money at first, okay? To get your business to a place where you can increase your valuation. You don't want to start giving shares of your company. So, and use your own funding and get your company, whether it's through sales or through subscriptions, wherever your revenue model is, to not necessarily a profitable stage, but at least break even to keep you going, to keep you growing until it's the time for you to bring on other money. Second type of funding is, we call it love money. Okay, love money, what it means, it could be your parents, it could be your siblings, it could be your friends. You know, family and friends essentially is the next stage of funding. We call it love money because it's patient capital. Essentially, people that will give you money and they're not necessarily expecting you to return 10x or they're not necessarily going to charge you interest. But be careful. Sometimes it gets complicated. So even if you're taking money from someone who's a relative or a friend, make sure that you paper that, you document it, and that you're setting expectations, right? The next round of funding can come from government grants and subsidies. And I can tell you from experience, there is so much money out there, governments, associations, foundations, there's so much money out there. You just have to be creative in finding those sources of money that won't dilute you as an owner, as a founder. So what kind of sources of money can you get? Do the research. If you don't know, ask other entrepreneurs. Go online. There's so much information online about how you can get government grants or subsidies for your business before you start diluting yourself. Now, with technology and social media, a new source of funding became very popular in recent years, and that's called crowdfunding. There's so many websites right now that facilitate crowdfunding, and I think it's a really great way to also do a little check in terms of your business idea. If you put it out there and you see that you're getting so much traction and attention, you're onto something. It's a good validation point. Is every business idea a good crowdfunding idea? No, but it's a really good way to get some validation from the market before you go to investors that are more sophisticated. And also crowdfunding is a way for you not to dilute yourself. So all of the examples the sources of funding that I've just talked about, you still maintain all the equity in your business, which is what you want. You don't want to give up equity too early in your business. And then we talk about angel investors. So I myself have been in angel investors for a few years, and I've chosen to back female founders. So, Samira said it, Abira said it, show them instead of just talking about it. I've chosen to show that I support female founders by putting in my own money in supporting these women. And so who are angel investors? These are people that have money and that some of them invest in other sources of investments like the stock market or whatever, but they want to diversify their money. They want to diversify their investments. And some of them are, business owners themselves, and they believe in supporting businesses. And so you want to be strategic about the angels that you take on or you say yes to. right? So if you are strategic, you can get more than just money from an angel investor. An angel investor can be someone who opens doors for you, who connects you with the right people, provides you business advice, someone who's ahead of you, perhaps that has done a similar business than you, but has done it many, many years ago and has a lot more experience. Someone who could potentially be a partner. So you can be very strategic in choosing the angel investors. And angel investors, again, could be family, friends, people in your circle, former bosses, former employers, could be people that you meet when you're going to these events and talking about your idea and pitching your idea, sometimes informally, just talking about what you're doing. Other sources could be business incubators. So angels, business incubators, and everything that I'm going to talk about before bank loans will be people that will give you money in exchange for ownership of your business. So they will give you money, but you have to give them shares in your company. So when angel investors invest in you, is a term sheet that comes with conditions that they're going to be getting some shares in your company. And so business incubators, the same principle. Business incubators are very, very popular these days, and they're everywhere. Whether you're in Europe or North America, even the Middle East, Africa, there's so many business incubators. So look them up. The most popular ones, tech starters, Y incubators, they're really, really popular. So why I like business incubators, they give you money as well, but you also have access to mentorship, to resources. So look them up. And they typically take anywhere between 5% to 10% of shares in your company. And they give checks anywhere between $50,000 to $150,000. I think most recently I heard that some incubators are giving $500,000, so $500,000 in funding. We get into VC. So VC is so popular these days. It's like the sexy thing to do. You want to be talking about, I've raised money from this VC and that VC, and my market capitalization is X and Y and Z. But let's face it, sadly, only less than 5% of female founders raise any money or receive any money from VCs. So the $1 billion are given every year, female founders only get less than 5%. Okay. And so if you also think about VC as an industry, whether it's female founders or male founders, I'll give you a simple example. A single VC will receive 1,000 pitches per year, 1,000. 500 will be perhaps invited to a face-to-face meeting to pitch in person. Of those 500, another 50 will probably move to the next stage where they will be invited to discuss terms. And ultimately, only 1% will be actually receiving money. So it's a 1% game. It is not the only way to get funding. It's getting a lot of traction in the media, but it's not the only way to get funding. Last but not least is bank loans. So some people are really terrified of getting debt. I don't want to get any debt. I don't want to get into debt. That's okay. But sometimes debt is the right way to grow your company. If you have a revenue model, and if you have stable cash flows, because you know what you're getting into when you go to the bank and they give you money for an interest rate. You can count for what a debt is. And so you know what you're getting into. However, banks are also highly demanding. You have to show reporting on a quarterly basis or monthly basis. So you really have to understand what the bank, what the loan is going to bring to your business. But sometimes it's the right way to come.
I'm sorry, can you unmute? Yeah, I had to unmute everybody.
That's okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Oops.
Actually, you are muted. Saloua, can you unmute, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. So what investors might be looking for? Okay, so different investors look for different things, but typically from my own experience in talking to other investors, most investors look for things like value proposition. So what are you selling? What is the product? What is your value proposition? Why is this important? Why is this product important? They look for team. So who is the team behind this product? Talk to me. This is where the story comes in. This is where you start talking about your story and the story behind each team member. They care about the market. Is this a sizable market? Is this a market where there's a big opportunity? They care about market segments. So what does that mean? Market segment is that which market segment are you targeting in this business that you are building or this venture that you're doing? They want to see an execution plan. Everyone can have great ideas. What makes a difference between a successful entrepreneur is ability to execute on their idea. Not just talking about having great vision, ability to execute on their plan. So they want to see, tell me how you're going to do it. Tell me how you're going to deliver those sales or how you're going to go get these new clients. So talk about your execution plan. Something extremely important is a revenue model. And so typically female entrepreneurs, from what I've seen, we typically shy away from talking about revenue. So we'll talk about passion, we'll talk about idea, we'll talk about our market, we'll talk about how great our team is. And sometimes we get either we don't have time or we just are too scared to talk about revenue model and we're afraid of being challenged. But that is so important, ladies, to talk about a revenue model. How are you going to make this business profitable? Because no one is going to invest if they don't think this business is going to be profitable. So talk about your revenue model. Is it a subscription based? Is it going to be, are you selling a product? What are your product margins? Talk about your revenue base. Are you signing partnerships? Are you getting revenue from partnerships? There are so many different revenue models, but you really need to put it up front and center, how you're going to make money from this business idea. Traction. So it's one thing to talk about the plan and talk about the idea, but if you've already started to do your business, so if you already started selling the product or if you already launched your online venture, talk about traction that you have. So how many followers you have, how many new customers have you signed, how many partnerships. Early signs of tractions usually indicate to the investors that you're on the right track. Right? And investors want to back founders that are on the right track. If you haven't started your idea and you're still working on it, like I said, if you put it up for crowdfunding and you got really a lot of interesting inquiries and people funding you, talk about that. That's a form of traction. If you're doing a survey and you put it out there and you got thousands of people responding to your survey, that's a form of traction. So just show that you're gone beyond the idea. And the last thing is the pitch. And so a lot of times we get so stuck and so hung up on the pitch. It has to be perfect. We spend so much time on the pitch and we forget the content. Pitch is part of what they look for. It's not all they look for. So yes, you want to practice your pitch. You want to prepare a good pitch, visual pitch, but don't spend all your time on the pitch. These are all the other things that the investors look at. Okay. So there is no magic recipe for success. And truly, you can be the most intelligent person, but you still have to do the homework. It's like in school. When you go to school, you have people that are so intelligent, but they don't work hard. They don't do their homework. Do you think they're going to get an A? Maybe sometimes, but often not all the time because they have not put in the work to get that A on a regular basis. So you really need to do your homework. So what does homework mean? Do your research. Who are you meeting? Find out who is the investor that you're meeting. Have they invested in other similar companies? Have they invested in companies in the same geography? Is this the type of company that they invest in? Don't go pitch somebody who, for instance, you'll see in their track record, never funded a female company. So like chances are they are not going to say yes. If you see somebody who has a pretty diversified investment portfolio, you stand a good chance. If you see someone who, different investors invest in different stages. So you have some investors that will invest at the seed, pre-seed, and then we talk about in VC, series A, B, C, D, and I'm happy to talk about this later if you have any questions, but really try to understand the investor, his area of expertise, or what is his sweet spot? What does he like to invest in? If an investor doesn't invest in tech, don't go pitch him a tech idea. And conversely, if an investor only invests in tech and you have a product that is skincare, well, don't go pitch him that idea. Focus on customer needs. This is where the storytelling can unfold, and this is where you can really talk about the problems that you're solving by your business idea. You heard it earlier. If you find yourself in front of an audience and all of a sudden you're starting to see people connecting and people building momentum, you are probably solving a problem. Sometimes you don't know what the problem is that you're solving and you stumble into it, but that's okay. But the minute you actually figure out what the problem is, talk about that. Talk about what is it that you're solving? What is the real problem that you're solving? A good example of this is often you see all these great skincare products or great companies that are putting, products out there. And you're like, well, how do I choose? I don't know which one is which. The ones that do very well are the ones that can articulate what is the problem that they're solving. So I'm worried that they will tell you this product helps you work on this. You're, for instance, someone who has acne prone skin. Our product will help you clear up your skin. Or someone who wants to work on hydration, skin hydration. When you have products that are their value proposition is very clear, usually are the products that are very successful. Be future-minded and think big. So often investors usually look at women or female founders and say, they just think small. Like, I wanted to invest, it's a good idea, but you're thinking about solving a problem one person at a time. Tell me how you're going to be solving problems 1 million person at a time. Tell me how you're going to scale. Think big. And truly, us as women, and I put myself in this as well, we want to try things small. We want to start small and see how it goes. We don't like to talk about big numbers. But you know what? The guys show up in the room and they talk about how they're going to take over the world. And so don't let yourself fall into that trap of thinking small. Think big. Even if today you're starting small. Group. So think about that. Investors are like signing into a marriage. So you need to be really aligned with your investor base that they're going to be supporting you in the long run. Having strong fundamentals. So I talked about it earlier briefly. As women, we often, sometimes I've met these brilliant women that are engineers, that are mathematicians, that have highly skilled at numbers and modeling and things like that. But when it comes to their pitches, they just take the numbers out of the pitch, or they leave it to the end and they go through it very quickly. Don't do that mistake. Really take the time to know your numbers. And if you don't know numbers, that's okay. Get help. Talk to your accountant. Bring with you somebody who can talk to the numbers, because investors are going to want to know. They're going to ask questions and they want to know that you understand the numbers, that you understand the path to profitability. But you know what? Even with all of this, you sometimes get it right and you do everything that you can in your power to have this great pitch, and you prepare and you practice and you show up. And sometimes investors still say no. And you know what? That's okay, because sometimes investors are humans as well, and investors will make mistakes. So there are some great examples of investors that were pitched ideas and they said no to, and then those ideas went on to become, unicorns, amazing ideas, billion-dollar companies, and that's okay. So it's up to you when somebody says no to you, an investor says no to you, to give up or to rise and double down on your business. And just to give you an idea of some very well-known examples of female CEOs and entrepreneurs that faced rejection over and over hundreds of times before they became successful, I put together this last slide as an inspiration. Some of them are households, you know them, the Oprahs of this world, the Vera Wang of this world, but some of them are newcomers. And so if nobody knows the story of Melanie Parkins from Canva, she now runs a billion-dollar company, but she had to overcome hundreds of investors saying no before she actually got her first investor who invested in her company. And, Sarah Blakely, if nobody knows the story of Spanx, go read about Sarah. Sarah is such an inspiration, but she also got through a lot of rejection before she got the first yes as an investor. So with that, ladies, ends my presentation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Absolutely. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. Like, we went down into business, into investment and all that. I was taking notes before my internet went down. So yeah, that's a lot of information. I hope everybody was taking notes because that's very important. Investment and pitching to investor. That's a very important portion when you're starting your business. And I saw, oh, my volume dropped. How about now? Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, I will scream. All right. So I saw a question from Belhaj, last name. She was asking if you can drop your question again because the chat was deleted for me when I exited. So please drop the question because it's a really good question. Meanwhile, Ru'a, she asked, how did you took the step of letting go of your job in the bank?
Yeah, really great question. And let me tell you, it was not an easy decision. Like I said, everybody I knew, literally everybody I knew was telling me, don't do it. And so I knew in my gut that I needed something more in my life. And so I went on a trip with my girlfriends. And on the flight, I wrote down the pros and cons of having this job. And then I realized that as I was writing that down, there were so much more cons of how I was feeling at the moment than pros. And I knew that this was no longer bringing me joy in my life. And so that I needed to do something else. And I didn't quite know exactly what I was going to do next, but I knew that I needed to explore something else. And so if that's helpful to anyone, writing things down sometimes can give you clarity.
Awesome. I hope that answered your question, Ru'a. And yeah, back to the good question I like. So Dora Belhaj, she asked, could you please tell us how an entrepreneur can participate in investment series or rounds?
Yeah, very good question. So there are different ways to invest. So you can either invest through a fund, so you can become an investor in a fund, and there are different VC funds that invest in. Now, the beauty of this is that in the last 5 years, there have been so many more female funds that are backing female founders. So if you want to invest in a specific area like female founders or tech, whatever it is, that you can research funds that have the same investment thesis. So that's one way. The second way is there are all sorts of business clubs, forums where investors typically go and do these pitch days. So for years before even I decided to launch my own thing, I would go to these pitch days. Chambers of commerce will have them, associations will have them, where you have entrepreneurs coming with their ideas, pitching their ideas. So that could be another way of investing. I talked about crowdfunding. So now there are crowdfunding platforms that have become more sophisticated where you can become an investor and take part of a founding round as well. Oh, and the last part is angel groups. So you can also join angel groups. And so there are some very popular ones. Angel List is one of them in the US, but there are some in all the continents, and you can join an angel group and start investing in an angel group. If you have more questions about investments, you can ask me later. I'm happy to take those as well.
Yeah, amazing. I'm sure that she's the go-to about all these questions. And also, I'm gonna drop a link for something I came across yesterday, the Female Founders Fund.